In theaters now, I'm not sure if this is playing everywhere. This might be a limited release at the moment. Is a new movie entitled The Eyes of Tammy Faye, based on the life of televangelist Tammy Faye Baker. Also, the title of a documentary from 2000, 2001 about Tammy Faye Baker. So this is a film based on a documentary. So this stars Jessica Chastain in an amazing performance where if there wasn't a sequence of this film where she sort of looks like herself, you would never know it was her. Jessica Chastain as Tammy Faye Baker and Andrew Garfield as Jim Baker, and some pretty well-known people in this here and there, like Cherry Jones plays Tammy Faye's mother, and Vincent D'Onofrio is Jerry Falwell, and on and on. And directed by Michael Showalter, who you may know, I initially came to know from The State, the MTV ensemble comedy, sketch comedy show, and then he later went on to do a movie called The Baxter, which I actually quite like, well worth checking out if you like a sort of goofy romantic comedy indie movie. And also he was in Stella for a while, TV show in the comedy group with Michael Ian Black and David Wayne. Anyway, this was really, really good. This is something, I lived through the era of the televangelists and the televangelist scandal of the 80s into the 90s, and I remember a lot of this happening. Didn't pay incredibly close attention to it, but I remember it happening. And at the time, for the most part, Tammy Faye Baker was a joke. She was a woman who was perky and very, very religious and had puppets and sang and wore a whole lot of makeup and was just a target for everybody, for TV comedy and just in general. Nobody really took her terribly seriously. And then when the scandal went down, was a target for derision and scorn and hatred. Somebody who was, using religion to enrich themselves. Wouldn't be the first and won't be the last. So she was a person who, me and probably most people just dismissed. And it wasn't until I saw a show that Fox did, again, frivolous content, in a show. It was called The Surreal Life. So it was a mix of the real world and other things like that. And basically, real world and or Big Brother, they took a bunch of celebrities who were not really A-list celebrities. They were farther down the rung at that point. And this was probably the late 90s, early 2000s or so. And they put them all in a house and saw how everybody reacted. And it was actually a fascinating show. And one of the biggest things I took away from that was that Tammy Faye Baker was just a really good person, a really nice person who really cared about other people and happened to be one of those super upbeat, super optimistic, perky people that some people just can't take seriously or that grates on them. So anyway, we're not talking about that. We're talking about this. The Eyes of Tammy Faye is really good. It shows you Tammy Faye Baker's life from being a young girl in somewhere in the South with very religious parents and a very religious community, and how she utilized, being the center of attention to get attention, but also to just, she used what talents she had with singing and ultimately puppetry to express her faith and get more people to, hop on that train. We see her as a little girl, we see her meeting Jim Baker, and we see them, rising up to become the people that we always knew. What's really interesting, and one of the many things I like about this, now I'm not a religious guy, but as long as it doesn't hurt anybody, follow what you follow, and that's cool. I believe in the Bill and Ted credo of be excellent to each other. Sometimes it gets tiresome to see anybody who's religious treated as an idiot in movies. It's easy to do. It's done a lot, but it's just like any cliche, it gets tiresome for me. So I thought it was very refreshing to see the Bakers not portrayed as fools. I mean, they're endlessly optimistic and there's humor in that, but they're never really shown to be terrible people or idiots. And you do see Tammy Faye throughout, which was true to her character, speaking up for the smaller groups of people, speaking up for the downtrodden, defending those that those around her might not defend because of what they believe in. And it was just interesting to see just a very fair and positive portrayal of these people. I'm not saying they didn't do anything wrong, because by all accounts, things were done wrong. And it gets into that a little bit. It really paints Jim Baker in a much less positive light than it does Tammy. But overall, it's just a really nice recreation of the eras this film takes place in. Some interesting and really cool stylistic choices on occasion, but not overly flashy, and really good use of music, some really excellent editing at times, and just Chastain, you can't take your eyes off her while you're watching it, and she just disappears into this role. Like I said, if there wasn't this sequence where she's at a certain age, like maybe in her late teens, early 20s, where they put a little bit of a facial appliance on her to make her face more the shape of Tammy Faye's, but other than that, you would not even know it's her. Like when I saw the original trailer for this, they just show her as, you know, full-on Tammy Faye. When I saw the trailer, if they didn't say Jessica Chastain, I probably never would have known or guessed that's who this was. It's one of those disappears into the role performances. And she's one of the most dependable actors around for years anyway. Like, you know, no matter what the movie is, she's going to be solid in it. Andrew Garfield is good as Jim Baker. You don't ever lose sight of who he's really is. Like, I don't ever think, my God, I'm seeing Jim Baker. But he's good. And funny enough, side note, as I'm watching this, I'm like, we don't need a Psycho remake. We didn't need that first Psycho remake. We certainly don't need another one. But if you had to, Andrew Garfield would not be bad. Maybe moreover, if you wanted, and he doesn't even necessarily look that much like him, but something about how Andrew Garfield portrays Jim Baker in this movie really gave me an Anthony Perkins vibe for some reason. And I was like, wow, if you did an Anthony Perkins biopic, or if you needed a scene where Anthony Perkins strolls into a party, I think Andrew Garfield could pull that off. It's interesting. Anyway, that was just something that occurred to me. Anyway, Eyes of Tammy Faye, really good. Whether you hold her up highly as somebody to admire or not, it's a very sympathetic portrayal of her as a person and not just as this sort of religious clown, which I think, not to be cruel, but was how most people saw her who weren't part of the flock in the 80s and 90s, and just a peek inside all of that went on. I remember watching, it was just one of this is back in the days of early cable when you only had like 13 channels. I remember CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network. I watched it because they ran old TV shows late at night. I turned it on. I would flip until I saw black and white on the channel, and I knew it was going to be You Bet Your Life or Life of Riley or Jack Benny or something like that. But in flipping through the channels, you would see it. So I remember the look of the 700 Club and the PTL stuff and that blue set with all the white lattice work, and they recreate that really nicely. And again, the colors in this movie are fabulous. This is really a good one to see in the theater because it is so visual and the music is so good. I saw it in AMC. I don't know if it's an AMC exclusive or if it's just select theaters right now, but totally worth traveling to see. Everybody in it is good. The drama works. The sympathy works. The end theme or the end music is sung by Tammy Faye's daughter. At first I thought it was her. A woman, by the way, who did have a good voice. And her daughter has a really good voice too. And it has the sort of stamp of approval of her two kids, or the Baker's children, which might explain, I don't think they would be consultants on a movie that really trashed their parents, but there's probably another side to the story. I know there's a book about the whole PTL scandal. Now, this, like any good biopic or any good movie, this makes me want to dive into the original Eyes of Tammy Faye documentary. This makes me want to read more about them. It makes me want to find video clips. I looked at this site that I like called History versus Hollywood on this film, and it appears to be very accurate. I mean, there are certain things that are artistic license and dramatized. Certain marginally salacious things that you see in this film may or may not have ever happened, but it really feels like a pretty honest depiction from somebody's point of view as to what went on. So at any rate, in theaters now, well worth checking out. This is probably going to be one of the best of the year when I tally such things. This is probably an awards season thing you're going to hear again. Eyes of Tammy Faye.